Come on, Book of Faces.
Hee haw.
So I've been listening to a lot of Greg Boyd lately.
Who is Greg Boyd?
Brandon, how do you not know who Greg Boyd is?
Quite
He's a
simply, I don't.
he's a pastor, but he's been talking about. I've watched a video recently where he's talking about God's relationship with humans
Mm-hmm.
and how oftentimes we can take God's heart
Mm-hmm.
and spin it because of how we view our culture and then misrepresent what he's actually trying to convey because we put our piece into it,
That's
kind of
gotta
like
be
a
ridiculously easy for us to do. In what he said into what we think he said.
yeah. Yeah, it's like spiritual telephone, I guess.
Yeah, where our what life we've had up to this point is greatly affecting how we interpret what we hear and read. Yes.
Yeah.
Or if we could read it all, because there are illiterate people out there that have not been blessed with a nice education to know how to read, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody on my stream today about the Dark Ages and how it was very restricted
Mm.
back then.
And it's not because of the actual church, like the people that followed Christ truly, that there was dark ages. It was because of the pseudo church that followed the government that and was the government that caused the dark ages.
Yeah.
I've heard some positive things that have come out of it, though. Some things I was surprised about, but it was not actual Christianity that caused that, because actual Christianity would not cause for an anti-science, anti-whatever, like
Hmm.
church-run uh, governmental system that uses the word of God to beat people down and lock people up and not really kind of mismanage things. I just want to kind of dispel that, because I know if you don't grow up as a Christian, that you'll definitely hear a lot of false information regarding Christianity.
Oh, dude, I feel like even if you grow up as a
You
Christian,
still get fed false information. Yes, it'll either
yeah,
make you angry or depressed.
yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes me sad that it's all misrepresented, and I'm sure I misrepresent Jesus frequently, but
We
yeah,
misrepresent the human race as a whole frequently.
well, it just blows my mind that God doesn't feel the need to defend himself, especially when it comes to something so vital to who we are and our identity.
I think what also blows my mind is the fact that God has not hit the reset button already.
Well, he did once.
Well, kinda, but he didn't completely wipe out all humanity.
Yeah,
It's kind of a clean wipe, but not entirely.
it was like a reset,
Yeah,
not a shutdown.
it was a soft reset where the computer kept running.
Hmm.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on your thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nation and a lay counselor, and with me today, an invisible, oh, that's not you. There we go, is the wonderful Tim Denock of Break the Meta LLC. I got it right.
Hmm.
And life coach. And today, this is Get Naked Monday, where we take some time and absolutely just get vulnerable with you guys about what's going on in our personal lives, that that we are human beings, and as human beings we go through stuff and have to work through them, and we're not perfect. And it's really important. Like, I know for some people that may come on and they might see this stream, they're like, wow, this is awkward, why are we talking about this, could we please stop?
Hmm.
But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need to see stuff like this, because I think a lot of people get this idea. Oh, thank you for liking the stream. I think a lot of people get the idea that Christians or politicians, scientists, humanity in general, we always picture these perfect individuals and we elevate them above all of humanity and think they could never do wrong, they could never fail, they have no problems whatsoever. And it is my mission and duty to make sure that you know that even the people that you respect most have problems and things that they're working through. So that way, when you go through something, and as you inevitably will, you don't think, wow, I've terribly failed. I'm a horrible person. How could I be dealing with this for the 50th time in a row? It has nothing to say about the quality of you as a person. It just means that you're going through a rough time, and this is how you work to get over those issues, by bringing them into the light and not pretending like you have it all together. So, and especially in this day of age where we, at least in America, have had decades of pastors, evangelists, just different people in biblical leadership that have suddenly, like all of a sudden, like just it comes out that they've been dealing with this affair in the background or whatever, and like, how did this happen? You know, they were just paragons of perfection. Like, how, like, I feel it's really important to kind of just make the distinction that everyone, whether it be, you know, someone you really admire or someone you don't even know, has their own struggles that they're going through, and the way that you work through that is by being vulnerable with people. So I want to kind of lead the way in that. And that's why I started Get Naked Mondays, just kind of bear it all kind of thing. Like, this is where I'm at right now, and this is how I'm working through it. So, yes, this is your kind of stream, Moon. That's great. I'm like vaguely, unfortunately, I don't know how to get Discord's chat into with the rest of the chat from YouTube and Facebook, but oh well, maybe one day there'll be a way that we can have that included. But until that point, if I end up saying something randomly like, what are you talking about, Brandon, that's because I'm also paying attention to our Discord page, which also has chat going on in that. So anyways,
something you said a minute ago, Brandon, made me think about all the people that I heroized. Is that a word?
No, it works.
Yeah, some people that I heroized in my life, and there were a lot of people that, like, in school, the cool kids, or, you know, people that I admired, or heroes or whatever. They always just seemed like they were so far away, and I could never be like that.
Yeah.
You know, it always seemed like they had it all together. They had everything going for them, and that me getting to a point where I could feel as free in my own skin or as confident in my own skin as them was never going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. Like, if back then I had people that I admired, or people that showed me the example that I wanted to follow, saying, hey, I have these same issues too, I think it would have been a lot easier for me to come out of my shell and say, okay, well, I've actually got this, and this.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I value my friendship with you so much, because you're always so honest about what you're going through, which in turn makes it easy for me to be honest.
Yeah. And I want to like clarify, like, the purpose of being open and vulnerable like this is not to say, here's where I am and this is where I'm going to stay. Like, you don't want to just talk about what you're going through to then stay where you're at, because that's not the goal. Our goal is to continuously grow and build from decade to decade as we get older, until we are very rich in character and morality by the end of our lives. And that's the purpose of it. So I share these things not because, oh, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to stay and I've reached perfection. Like, again, no, you know, this is not stuff I'm necessarily proud of, but this is just stuff that I'm working through. And I know the best way to get to the place where I want to be is by not pretending like it's not there and working through this. And the stuff we're going to talk about today is stuff that I've talked about in previous Get Naked Monday streams. So it's not going to be a surprise if you've been watching the other streams before this point. But it is a new situation and there are nuances to it. And so I guess we'll just jump right in. This is a very unplanned format today. Typically I have like a much more planned out session, but I don't, so give me grace. So all that to say, so if you were watching 2 Get Naked Mondays ago, in fact even just last one I think too, one of the things that I've talked about frequently is the fact that I have needed to be more confrontational, and less afraid about what will happen if I confront someone about things that are bothering me. And so I've been working on that. Good news, I have improved when it comes to that. I'm actually kind of cut myself loose, and I'm going to see, like, I'm going to probably swing to the other side of being a little bit too confrontational to a degree. That way I can find my center and find the right balance between being confrontational but also being thoughtful. But I realized I got way too far over here and I needed to come this way. But in the process, like we talked about on Monday last week about how I needed to go downstairs, confront my neighbors, and do all that kind of stuff. And like after literally the day after that conversation, Tuesday, all of a sudden I wake up, I'm feeling so sick because the fact that I'm feeling so tempted to look at porn. And I'm like, what is happening? Because for the past, I want to say month and a half, I think it was June, last time I felt like this was month and a half, like I was fine. Like I came to the realization back in early June that one of the things that I was failing to do was speak over myself what I wanted to see in my life. I knew that the way I was raised, it was important that what you said over yourself, what thoughts you allowed in your head to continue was really important. I knew that if I kept speaking negative things about myself, I would naturally believe those things and head in those directions. But between that point and June, at somewhere along the line, I let go of all that because another component that I was missing was that I was so focused on what I was saying about myself that I became anxious and felt like if I didn't continuously speak positive things of myself, it was all on my shoulders and I would fail and it would be my fault, and it was an anxious way to live, and I beat myself into the ground with that mentality and had to let it go. And I then began to focus on just talking with you and some other people about it, being accountable and just kind of working through things, but not really taking time and controlling what I said about myself. And so in June, that became real to me again, and I started to speak better of myself, that I am a loving person. I'm not addicted to porn, that I was the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus, a joyful person, full of God's love. Just stuff like that I would repeat over myself in the morning of every day. And that made all the difference. Like that, from June until last week, that was all it took, ironically, to be fine against the temptations to look at porn. But Tuesday, last week, it was no longer working. And I hit the ground hard, just absolutely hit the wall, and all my efforts up to that point seemed like they had no power or effect to help me continue to not look at porn, and so I stumbled. And for the past week, from that point, it's been not great. And I've talked to you about this, Tim, and some other people about that. And one of the things I realized from day one, part of the issues that I was dealing with this time, was that I needed to continue to work on being confrontational. Like it was a moment where I couldn't continue doing what I was doing for it wasn't working. I realized it was because I was not being intentional enough about being confrontational. And it was like a multifaceted issue. I realized that because up until Tuesday, I was not being confrontational or willing to be confrontational, I had developed a victim mentality, that I would allow things to happen to me rather than to say, I don't want this. And it spilled into my sexual life, if you will, of just not when the temptation arises, rather than having the strength to say, I don't want this, instead I was just like, okay, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm not going to do anything about this. I could have, stood, texted you, did everything I could in my power, but I just did not. And I failed. And I realized that that was in part to do with the fact that I was neglecting being assertive and being confrontational when I needed to. Not necessarily like I need to go to war with everything that disagrees with me or makes me upset. Like, no, but there are certain things that are important that I was just kind of like, I'm gonna pretend like that's not there. Hopefully, it will correct itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to, because I literally, like I mentioned last Monday, I would have rather started arguments with atheists about Christ than I would to confront my downstairs neighbors about almost setting my apartment on fire. Like, I would have rather dealt with burned property than I would. So that's a problem.
You know, something that you just said is something that a lot of people say, um, or think at least, as they're navigating things that are difficult. And you said that you wanted to ignore it so it would eventually just go away. And it's weird, you know, it's like when you ignore stuff like that, you just get numb to the repercussions and the ramifications and everything that comes with that. And over time, the small things you ignore makes it easier to ignore big things. And because, you know, thinking about where we've come from and where we're at now, as you grow, you start to understand boundaries and how to reinforce those, and you make better and better and better boundaries. Then you start realizing that you have access to the gate to let things in or out, or to prevent, you know, you can choose that, you know. But as you're navigating it, it's like, okay, well, what am I going to start making decisions on? What am I going to start being, as you said, assertive about?
Yeah.
You know, and when you take that first step, it is the scariest step, even if it's a
Yes.
small thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that. It made me think about the literal, like not the literal, but the natural, like for instance, the physiological. That's what I'm trying to think of the word. One of the things I noticed is that if you neglect something long enough on a physical aspect, so for instance, if you don't eat for long enough, your stomach starts shutting down and you begin to fail to perceive that you're hungry. Um, People who have fasted long enough can attest that comes a point where it's like the first day absolutely sucks and you feel terrible, and maybe a little bit on the second day, but about like the third day or so, the body just starts shutting down and it goes to other sources for food, and you no longer recognize that you're hungry. In the same way, one of the things that I have tangibly experienced is that the more water that I drink, the more that I'm thirsty. And the more I realize I'm thirsty. They say that you're supposed to replenish 70% of your body weight in water every day. And that seems like a ridiculously high number or high percentage to have to replace. But when I was starting to take that seriously, I was working at the walking company, and I would bring 3 bottles of water with me every day to keep track of my water intake, because each bottle had 16 ounces of water. And I would try to drink through all 3 by the end of the day. The more I got into the habit of that, the more I realized how thirsty I was throughout the day. Like, it was so stupid. If I wasn't drinking enough water, I didn't realize how much water I needed. But once I started drinking more water, I realized, oh my God, I can't get to the end of my thirst. And so when you were mentioning that, thinking about that, like, you know, if you avoid confrontation long enough, you can become desensitized to the need to confront someone about something that has been bothering you. Doesn't make the fact that it bothers you goes away. It's just you become desensitized to it, which could cause issues in other areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And on a more again, sexual note, I remember learning this through Dr. Henry Cloud. He was talking about one of his patients, a woman that kind of came to him about issues that she was having, specifically about getting into it while having sex with her husband, and she just couldn't. She couldn't feel anything. She wasn't really enjoying the process or anything, and it was causing an issue on the marriage. But what came into what they ended up realizing through counseling, what Dr. Henry Cloud ended up realizing was that she also had an issue with boundaries. She would have different people in their life have 100% reign over what they thought about her life and what they spoke into, and she would say no to neither of them. And so because she had an issue with determining what she felt was right or wrong, and kind of establishing with like exploring, for instance, what she does and does not like. Just not even sex related. We're just talking about just morality related, or just conversationally, what does she like or not. Because she did not allow herself to have an opinion, it was affecting her sexually. And as she began to say no to certain things and to start to determine her own opinion, it ended up opening her up all the way down to the sexual level, which was, I found that particularly fascinating. I was like, wow. And so that's why that was another factor that made me realize the issues that I'm having now is that I have not been confrontational. And so I've just kind of allowed things to happen that I would not find acceptable, and therefore it is affecting my ability to say no to myself, because I've not been saying no to other places either. Were you going to say something? Look like you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about, you remember how we were talking a while back, how Dan was talking about addictions, and he was talking about how a porn addiction is a lot more serious than an addiction to alcohol, because you don't need alcohol, but you do need sexuality.
Right.
And you, in that situation you were just talking about, you talked about how her sexuality was being affected by all these secondary and tertiary things that were not a base need. And I'm thinking, thinking about what we were just talking about, how you can let one small thing slide and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm thinking about layers, right? Like one of my big issues is with insecurity about my value, and talking about assertiveness. There's a large portion of my life where I've not been assertive because of that. And it's almost like I have this core thing that I have an issue with, but I can't tackle that because I've added all these layers that I've allowed. And slowly over time, I've had to peel back layer after layer after layer. And I've been working on that for like 10 years now. And I'm still not to the base layer handling or fixing my insecurity, And I'm thinking about how at the start of this cast, we were talking about how there are those people that just seem like they have the perfect life and they're unreachable, and I'm never going to get there. And it's like when you don't see them go through that process, you don't think that you can do it yourself, because there's so much to that process, and especially if you don't have a good upbringing, which my parents did a great job raising me. I'm not saying at all that I didn't have a good upbringing, but when you don't have a stewarded upbringing where it's intentional in every part of your life, where you have balanced grace and accountability, you start building those layers. And, it is a steady process, and it just seems overwhelming. And it's almost like you start the process feeling defeated because nobody tells you that you have to start at these layers and work your way down.
Yeah.
That just kind of clicked in my head when you were talking about that, because in my own personal life, I've had issues with my sexuality as well that have nothing whatsoever to do with my sexuality. Like, just being honest, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. There have been times in the past, however, where psychologically there's times where I didn't understand my value. I didn't understand my assertiveness. I didn't think that I was whatever. And that has affected my sexuality. But as I'm dealing with that, it's getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
I just think that's a cool concept.
Yeah. I feel like, whether it's for men or women, emotions definitely do affect our sexuality and how much we're able to actually fully reap the benefits of a truly healthy sexual relationship. Because, if you're not in the right mental state, there are other things that can kind of pull you away, whether you realize or not. Some obvious, some not so obvious, that can kind of pull you away from fully enjoying it as it's meant to be enjoyed. And that's just something I've learned. I've not fully experienced that in person, granted, but maybe you can attest to that more than I can attest that at this moment.
Well, I hope so, because I'm married and you're not, Brandon.
That's why I'm
some secret life.
No, that's what I'm trying to suggest. So yeah. But yeah, I kind of came to that realization that part of the challenge that I was facing was linked to the fact that I was unwilling to be confrontational when I needed to. So when the time came when I needed to defend my ground, I felt, what's the word? There's a word that really drives home when you feel like your power, your manliness, everything has been kind of stripped away from you, and you just kind of become submissive and um,
Demasculated.
demasculated. Like I didn't feel empowered in that moment to do what I needed to do. I felt like I was just a slave, and I'm not. I'm not a slave, and that's something that I have had to teach myself from what God's word says, and just repeating that over and over, reading what the word of God says, talking it out. Things of nature. When it comes to dealing with any form of sexual addiction, that's just something that's probably going to be like a lifelong journey kind of thing. But it is doable. It just takes time, and you're not going to get from point A to point B immediately whatsoever. I recognize, just in general, not necessarily 100% sexually related, but I recognize that there's been several moments in my life where I wish I wasn't single anymore. But every time I get to that place, a little bit after the point of feeling that, I end up realizing how glad I am that I wasn't there when I wanted to be, because there's just so many facets involved that I'm glad that I know now that I didn't know before that point. Like just on the topic of being assertive in general, I recognize that I am very attracted to women that are independent and strong, but being a person who
But Brandon, strong, independent women don't need no man.
well, you know what, I think that's a facade. I mean, yes, strong people in general don't need someone else to fix their life 100%. But I do think that we do better when we're, together, working together, than we are just being constantly 100% single the whole time. I don't know. That's my
Well,
personal
just to
belief.
clarify, also, you don't need people to fix your life, 'cause
Right.
that's what Jesus is for.
Right.
And your role in somebody's life in a relationship isn't to fix them.
Right. You
It's to
should not be
support them,
waiting.
encourage them.
Yeah, you should not be waiting to get into a relationship to start fixing your life. You have waited too long, and there's going to be plenty of things that are just going to cause issues in the relationship that could be avoided if you just continuously work on your life until the point where you find someone who works well with you. That way, you have a whole lot more to give at that point than just expecting it to fix you.
Yeah, I heard the story of this guy one time, and he was talking to his wife, and he made the comment, with about $4,000 of work, you'd be okay. Talking about like the surgery and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, you don't tell your wife that. But
Oh God, yeah. Wait,
But,
it took me a second.
I think he was just joking. But anyways, last night with one of my clients, I was having this conversation about assertiveness, and you know how you have those like care package drops of wisdom from God, and it's just like, whoa, where did that come from? It was one of those moments. And basically, God was just showing me that throughout the conversation, there's a difference between emotional assertiveness and confident assertiveness. And I was just thinking about that, and I'm like, when have I been emotionally assertive? And usually it's when I feel challenged or when I feel like my value is being threatened. Like the client that I was talking about, whenever they would use the word assertive, they would use a physical metaphor of saying it's assertive. I'm trying to be assertive, and I was just thinking about that. And I was like, man, so when you're being assertive, what you're telling me, based on your actions and how you view it, you're defending yourself from somebody. And she's like, yeah. And I was just thinking to myself, okay, well, if you're defending yourself from somebody, typically what you're doing is you're putting the circumstances of their value, and basically you're removing, as a Christian, you're removing from them the opportunity to heal their brokenness. Because if somebody's trying to take something from you, they're broken, they're messed up in some way.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, our goal is to help them do that. And the difference between emotional assertiveness, either responding in anger, in fear, in sadness, defensiveness, as far as being assertive, defending your value, is confident assertiveness. And I thought about Thanos, and I guys, I've not seen all the Marvel movies, so don't spoil them. Brown, don't be that guy. But I do know that throughout the whole Marvel series, Thanos didn't fight a lot of his own battles. He had other people doing it for him, and he just had that presence, like that powerful jaw, and when he was on camera, it's like he was walking around, like in the Beatitudes, and look them up. I think they're in Ecclesiastes.
The
I'm
Beatitudes
not
are
quite.
Jesus's Beatitudes, which are in early
Yes,
Matthew.
is it in Matthew?
It is in early Matthew, yes, like
Okay.
chapter 3 or something.
Yeah, basically, the first one says the meek will inherit the earth, and meek translated means gentle. Gentle translated means you have the power, but you only use it when necessary. You don't always use it. And I
Yeah,
was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, so you can't be emotionally assertive and confidently assertive. If somebody is gentle, they don't go around using their power at every opportunity when somebody threatens them.
yeah,
Just like Jesus, he could have struck down all the people when they were spitting on him and throwing things at him, and he could have just like Thanos and changed everything. He had
yeah,
that power, but he didn't do it, you know? And like he walked around, and even when Pilate was questioning him, he said, "Are you the king of the Jews? Tell me, who are you? Who do you answer to?" And Jesus just looked at the dude. And I'm like, man, okay, so what is confident assertiveness? And as I was talking, God was just showing to me that confident assertiveness comes from the fruits of the Spirit: joy, kindness,
love.
gentleness, love. And I'm like, okay, so you can be assertive and act in all that stuff too. So if somebody's addressing me in a way that's contrary to how I think I should be addressed, how am I going to respond? And am I going to respond to them in patience? Am I going to respond to them in mercy and gentleness? Or am I going to hit them with everything I got just because they're coming against me?
It's the reason why I got to this place though, interestingly, where I stopped confronting people and started to avoid it was because I did begin to realize just how complex everything is. And so when you're trying to assert your needs in a world of complexity where, and it's like, maybe this is maybe if you are a counselor or a psychologist, let me know if you also deal with this issue. But you realize just how complex people are. And so you want to assert your needs, but you automatically start thinking about all of the brokenness that they have that would bring them to cause this offense in the first place. And you're just like, uh... and it's just like, and you can see like the areas where you're probably also wrong, and you're just like, but I feel like I need this, but I also could see how I should not need this, and it's just like, but I kind of came to that place where I realized the complexity of life, and everyone's individual needs and stuff of that nature. But then I end up losing my own in the process, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and to the point where things that were legitimate, like that absolutely needed to be addressed, or we would have lost my entire apartment, like to the point where I would be too afraid to speak up and say something in that situation. Like, that's not okay. Like, I can't just pretend like this fire is not almost lapping a foot away, to be exact, and not to be, what's the word, hyperbole or whatever, like a foot away from lapping the bottom of my porch. Like, that's not okay. Like, it needs to be addressed. Someone needs to be watching that grill. But I'd somehow gotten to that place, and I have been needing to kind of pull back to the center again of like, okay, I do need to speak up. I don't have to fight every battle, but I do need to speak up in areas that are a threat to my life, legitimate threat to my life, or, if I really love and care for someone, and I know that I have at least some point in their life that, some say,
Mm-hmm.
maybe take a risk with that one and speak up and like, hey, I know you think this is okay, but it's really not. Because I think that's a problem. I think a lot of Christians, I really don't think I'm the only one on this. I feel like there probably are a lot of Christians that are in a similar boat to me, where they're seeing the corruption in America and afraid to say something about it because of the amount of offense that could happen by saying
Mm-hmm.
something contrary to what is acceptable right now.
I'm thinking about all the high profile people that are on that list of Ghislaine Epstein or whatever, the whole high profile pedophilia ring. You know, there are a lot of people who are just guilty by association that have gone to Epstein's island, and I'm thinking to myself, all those people probably are not pedophiles. I'm sure there are some of them that got there and they saw it, but they saw how many high profile people were there, and they were like, oh, I can't say anything because they're going to kill me,
Mm,
or I don't want to fall out of graces with these people. And they put their position in those people's lives up here, and the value of the kids that are being exploited down here, even though they're not pedophiles. And that's kind of the same thing, and it's like, why do I fear that? But it's just, kind of like what the Bible says about serving two masters. You can't serve God and mammon at the same time,
right.
and that's a really slippery slope as well. Because
Yeah.
I know that I've definitely, I'm 100% guilty of not defending the gospel and not defending Jesus and representing him the right way, because I valued more so what people thought about me in my conversations with them. And I didn't want to be honest, because I don't like it when people disagree with me.
Yeah.
One of those layers we were talking about, I feel like my value is threatened because people don't agree with me, when that's completely opposite of how it is. If I knew what my value was, people are going to disagree with me.
Yeah, and it wouldn't matter, And for me, like the
Mm-hmm.
reason this cut me is like like I said, just knowing the complexity of situation. Like, you're going to make a stance on there, you're going to realize that the people that are making these decisions thinking that they're right in them, and they've had brokenness and stuff of that nature, and I want to address the brokenness and all that. But more so than that, even, I recognize that the reason why I've not spoken up, I've noticed there seems to be like a rewriting of the history of America. All the things that we have been raised up, this is how it was, is almost being attacked. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing it, and like it's concerning, because and I don't speak up all the time about it, because in the past, speaking up about it, sometimes I've been wrong. And so I don't want to be foolish and speak about something that I haven't completely, totally, absolutely, 100% all the way through thought it out, a
Mm-hmm.
topic like this is the way it is, and then someone has to just put one article and then immediately just just destroy everything. I don't want to be foolish in that, but at the same time, you know and so
Mm-hmm.
there's that reason why I don't speak up, and then another reason is just a fear of pain, of just like, people, getting angry with me or hurting me, is another reason why it's like we live in a world where when we share our opinions, unfortunately, that can sometimes come with backlash, like they're trying to be defensive of their point to the point of hurting someone else for having a difference of
Mm-hmm.
opinion. And that's in the back of my mind every time I try to speak what I believe about something. Is like, this could be a moment where someone's going to yell at me or whatever, and that's not comfortable to want to. I don't want to talk and deal with that crap, but I realize I can't keep being quiet too.
Yeah.
Even though I don't have it all together, a part of being more assertive is I need to assert what I'm seeing that's going wrong, even if I am wrong. It has to be said, because if it is true, and I've just been sitting on this the whole time, like I know there are people that listen to me and look up to me, and I have at least some sort of responsibility to those people to speak what God has shown me, rather than to hide
Mm-hmm.
it for the off chance that I could get hurt about it, because then in reality I hurt everyone by not speaking. Not to say that I just foolishly just speak the first thing that I find without any kind of research or talking about it or whatever with people. But once I have at least some sort of a basis, I can't just pretend like it's not there.
Yeah.
And for an off chance of what could happen if I said something.
Yeah. Marriage is a lot harder in that aspect too, because, or in that regard, not that aspect. Um, Not being misogynistic or sexist or anything, but being a male leading the marriage in the way biblically I'm supposed to, not leading as though I'm greater than my wife or I'm better than my wife.
Yeah.
My role is to provide direction, give her something to follow. And that's so hard, especially when you don't have it all together and you don't have things figured out, and sometimes you make poor decisions, especially financial decisions, because we quantify our value, or at least I quantify my value through money a lot of the times. And now that I'm making $0, it's even more amplified how I spend our finances. And if I make a financial blunder, it's almost like, okay, well, before when I was making money, it wasn't that big of a deal because I could just make more money. Now that I'm not making money and she's making money while we build Thought Raid, and break the meta in UGN, um, it feels like there's less grace when that's absolutely not true. But thinking about making decisions and being assertive, the other day I made the decision that we were going. She said, I have an issue with our yard and it really depresses me. And I'm like, okay, well, let's fix this. And so I went out and I did some research, bought a bunch of railroad ties, put them together, and it's costing several $100s more than what we anticipated. And quantifying my value by how much money we have and how much money we've made and how I'm spending the money, I'm like, oh man, I'm failing as a husband, you know? But you have to give yourself that grace, because where you fall short, biblically it says, in your weakness I am made strong. And I was talking to somebody earlier, and it was a three-party conversation: me, this guy, and his friend.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's friend is a religious guy, has very strong opinions about Jesus. There's a lot of church talk that comes out of his mouth, not saying that's good or bad, just identifying how he speaks.
Is this
uh,
Jeff D and Z?
Z. Yeah,
Yes.
Jeff D and Z. Yeah, so it's those people. I talked to them again today, and I, prior to this guy over here, who's the churchy guy speaking, um, I was talking to the other guy, and I was like, do you feel comfortable talking about Jesus? And he's a newer Christian. And he said, no. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, I just don't know enough about it. And I'm thinking about how when the apostles first encountered Jesus, or when Jesus went and, there were all the conversions and stuff happening, it said, go and tell people about Jesus. And they didn't read the Bible. They didn't even have the Bible back then. They
Yeah.
just knew Jesus' character. They just knew that it had happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do we feel like we have to be so confident and know the Bible back and forth and know what Matthew 5:7 says and John 3:16? We have to have it memorized before we represent Jesus properly. That assertiveness you were talking about. How
Yeah.
how do we have confident assertiveness in not knowing that stuff when people are going to challenge us? And it's like, was my identity wrapped up in how much I know or what I believe?
Let's just take a second and acknowledge the fact that Jesus, while he was still alive, sent his disciples out for a period of time of ministry before and a lot of the people that Jesus had following him were fishermen, tax collectors, maybe they did a craft or something of that nature. No one of the Pharisee sort sent them out, so they probably didn't even have a full understanding of the Torah of the
The
Tanakh.
Tanakh? Me?
Oh, they didn't understand, the Torah. They didn't even have they probably did not have a full understanding or remembrance of the Torah and the prophets of that point. And they went out and they spoke about Jesus to other people and talking about the just spreading about the kingdom of God. They did that for a period of time while Jesus was still there. So that meant that they didn't even have the New Testament and the letters that were sent by Peter and Paul and other people. They didn't even have the Gospels. They were they were living out the Gospels at that time, and they did that. And Jesus found it wise enough to send them, even though there probably were arguments and disagreements along the way, for all we know that could have happened. But he sent them just fully confident in what they had at that moment to be able to go and talk about, the kingdom of God and stuff of that nature, to different people. And I found that interesting. Like, it's interesting when you're talking about that we don't have to have all of our ducks in the row to start talking about Christ. Not to say that we don't take the time to get our ducks in the row, so that way when we do have bigger and harder arguments presented, we have bigger and better responses. But we don't have to have it all together. We just the goal is to develop relationship and to connect with people and to not be afraid. That seems to be the case for me. Just go and talk about it. You may have some people that you're going to have to shake the dust of your sandals off as you leave their house, because they would not receive the blessing of what you had to give to them. But, you're going to find some that are ready for what you currently have in that moment.
Yeah. When we were talking earlier, there's nothing wrong with what the guy was saying. And but he was talking about, oh, you know the firmament, awesome, brother, you know about the Nephilim. Um, and for some reason, the way that he was talking to, like I said, there was nothing wrong with the way he was talking to me, but I felt challenged because it seems like he knows a lot more about the Bible than I do.
Mm.
But because I see a discrepancy between what I believe and what he believes, because he has read more and has more factual knowledge about it, I might be wrong. And I'm like, why does that matter so much? Because I know what my relationship with Jesus is like. I know what it is and what value it has and how true it is and what it's done in my life. Why do I feel threatened by this guy just because he has a different opinion than me?
I,
But I have a feeling like he's a type A personality where he's very confrontational.
yeah.
But I don't know if it's just me responding to what I perceive or believe to be possible emotional confrontation between confident confrontation or assertiveness. I don't know. It just made me feel some kind of way.
I think the answer is that it should not bother us. Like, not to say that if it's bothering you, you're in the wrong, but I'm saying that like we should recognize that it's okay, and the fact that someone knows more than us should not be a threat. It's just an opportunity rather to learn and to grow from that point, and to go and get answers. Because I think it's good that there are lots of people that know more than us, because then when we hit them and we don't know what to say, that drives us. The goal is to go back to God about it and to continue to develop that relationship with him. So when we hit the wall, that's an opportunity to stop, reflect, learn, grow,
Mm-hmm.
talk to God, and then come back later with a better response should the opportunity arise. But I don't think God wants us to live in retreat, but live in advancement, where we're just constantly moving forward from moment
Mm-hmm.
to moment, gaining more as we go along and being confident more in him and his ability to transform and equip and empower us than our ability to obtain all this,
Mm-hmm.
and have to have it all together before we even say anything. David was
Yeah.
saying, that it has gotten to the point where people are afraid of speaking up because of the fear of being shot down. So they won't even answer to the smallest of things due to that fear. And yes, because we also live in a day and age where it is super easy to gain knowledge, but also hard at the same time. And we can see the complexities of life through our social media and television, through news feeds, even magazines or things that we still get them. We can access to this knowledge. You can't just hide behind it anymore, like oh, no one's gonna know that, so I can talk about this here, and then the world won't reach about it somewhere else. Like, that's not a luxury whatsoever anymore.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've learned through cold case detectives is that, sometimes people get away and they go into a foreign area and they start talking lies about another area because no one's gone over there to verify that. That's becoming less and less of a luxury nowadays because of the technology that we have and the more interconnectivity. So I think a lot of people are afraid to look stupid, or to be wrong and then to be rejected. I think ultimately probably the main fears really is the fear of rejection and pain, or just, well, yeah, because the fear, the pride aspect, I feel like that comes into, again, being rejected by people because you're looked at as unworthy or stupid or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you know I don't know if there'd be a space for pride without also fear of the ramifications of wrongness or
Well, I think
failure.
it also has something to do with misinterpretation, because I know that there are certain things that I don't post on Facebook or social media because I don't want to I don't want to ruin my relationship with people. And it's sad to say that, but there are just some people that just seem like they are so hardcore pseudo activists about certain topics. And there is a lot of shaming that goes on. There's a lot of ultimatums that go on where it's like, if you believe this, unfriend me now.
What is
Or,
the point of that?
like I saw somebody on Facebook earlier say, if you don't wear a mask, well, I mean, I get the concept. Like, yeah, it's respectful towards other people to wear a mask, especially if you're sick.
Yeah.
But it's like, how can you disagree? You can't hold your opinion so tight fisted that if you disagree with somebody, it's like, okay, well, you either believe me or you're an asshole. You believe me or you're an idiot. You believe me and you're in my camp, or you're this. If you follow the Republicans, then you're against the Democrats. It's why does it have to be
It
like that?
does
But
not.
also, if I post something, it's almost like I know that there's so much spaghetti knowledge out there. You can't post one thing without it being tied to another, and there are so few people who are willing to actually endure the investment to be engaged in a conversation, to take it and talk about thing after thing after thing, to truly understand what like in the counseling world, you and I are frequently talking about refining what's going on, and that's what this is all about. We get down to the bedrock of what is really the issue, or what we're really trying to say, clean language. But so few people want to do that because they want instant gratification with no investment. They want the intimacy with no commitment. And so the misinterpretation, the misrepresentation, which is exactly what the Bible is all about. The Bible is a representation of human observation of what people have done with with regards to their relationship with Jesus by man's standards. And that's why there's so many faculties of misrepresentation and inconsistency and fallacy, even though the Bible is supposed to be a perfect work. It's an imperfect perfect work. But going back on the social media thing, I don't want to post something and it be actually what I think, but people make assumptions about me because they won't take the time to say, well, Tim, why do you think this? They just automatically assume, oh, well, here's why you're being assertive about this. You must be an asshole. You must
Yeah.
be a Republican. You must be on my stream the other day, I was talking about how divorce is not an option between my wife and I. Like it's not an option. That's a commitment we've made. And the guy said, "Oh, you must be a Catholic." No.
How does that have anything to do with Catholicism?
Yeah. Now, in his defense, I'm not shaming this guy. He was just, from his point of view, he's like, oh well, he wasn't saying, oh well, you must be. No, he's an awesome dude. We have lots of great conversation. I've got a great relationship with him, even though it's very new. So I'm not saying that, but it's just one of those clear observations of how even on the surface level, people can just make can have misinformation about what you're actually trying to mean.
Did my Catholic radar just go off? Oh my gosh. I don't know why, but for some reason the YouTube comments are not showing up on that. We'll have to get that fixed for next time. But yeah, I feel like we need to stop worrying so much about who it's going to offend or whatever that nature is. I don't know, because I personally feel like I've gone too far off onto that edge, to the point where it's like I've become the very thing that I did not like in the previous presidency, of a person who's just so politically correct or whatever and never actually really speaks to think my mind of what's going on. Like, I have become that, and it's just like, again, at least it's a good basis point for don't judge people, because, we are very easy to become the very things we hate. So don't judge people. But I feel like I can't live anymore pretending like that there's just like I just agree with all these sort of things, or not speak up the things that bother me, because I think it's literally, honestly, affecting my sex life. Just bringing it back to the original topic, I think it's affecting my sex life and causing temptations to be much more ridiculous than they should be.
Obama, you're affecting my sex life. Trump.
Because I had to process that with you. I remember the day that that came to me, shower thoughts. As I was in the shower, I was like, after I got done, I had to text. I was like, does this make sense? Because this is what's coming to mind. It seems way too simple, but I think sometimes the answers to things are much more simple than we think they are at the same time. And I think in this case, it's definitely been the case. And so just kind of reeling it back into the original topic again. Here we go. But dealing with like the ramifications and stuff of that nature, I think like besides learning that I needed to be more confrontational, and that was actually affecting me with my ability to resist the temptation to look at porn, I think by going through porn again it's had to make me once again face my identity in Christ rather than how I felt, because like there's on the day that I struggled with it again, I took a walk. And when I take walks nowadays, I have to usually take walk at nighttime because it's too hot during the day. So I'll walk like, 12 in the morning. And I have like all this paved area that I can walk down. So I'm not like walking through people's yards or anything, but I'm just walking, down the street or whatever. So a great time.
Looking around, looking through your windows at 1 a.m.
No, I am not doing that. I am walking past your windows, granted, but I'm not looking into them. There's a difference, okay? But it's turned into like a great time to just kind of mentally process through what I'm going through and like talk to God about it and stuff. And I feel like I've been getting hard on myself through this time again, like unnecessarily hard on myself, because I feel like the main thing that God's been wanting me to do through this time is come to him. I'm going through a problem, I'm coming to him. I'm having a good time, I'm coming to him. I don't know what to do, I'm coming to him. Like I feel like the main issue I've seen a lot of Christians is when they hit something they don't know how to get over, they go away from God and they feel like they failed and they wander away from him because they don't feel like they deserve, or they feel like God failed them or whatever, and that's not the case. And that's something I've done like twice as much since all of this. I felt like God kind of showed me like there's always in Christianity, if you're new to Christianity, here's a little lesson. There has always been a lot of confusion, and not confusion, but a lot of speculation on what thorn in the flesh means and what thorn in the flesh that Paul, the writer of like 2/3 of the New Testament, was referring to when he wrote about it. But I feel like there is intentionally that way, because what is considered a thorn in the flesh for us could be completely different for every single person. And I've been wondering, I feel like God was kind of showing me that he was using this, not to say that pornography is okay, because I do not believe it is, but that he was using my proclivity to that as a way to get me to come back to him, because there was areas in my life that needed to be addressed that I was ignoring, that until an area that God has been taking care of me and making me strong in was suddenly that protection was lifted and I kind of struggled again, I wasn't going to be aware of it. And I feel like God was kind of showing me in that process of like, hey, like, one, we need to refocus here, okay? Your strength comes from me, not me, but him. Your strength, referring to as God was speaking to me for clarification, your strength comes from me, not from yourself. And I'm grateful that every time that you begin to struggle, the first thing that comes to mind for you is to come back to me. And there's like a lot of people, when they go through these temptations and they fail, they don't talk about it. And when they don't talk about it, they don't come back to me about it, they don't come to me, their first inclination is just to spiral rather than to talk it out. That's where it ends up turning into the affair, where it ends up turning into they have this side thing going on that they're ashamed to talk about. Just what was a small issue becomes a larger and larger and larger issue. And it was like he wanted to kind of like encourage me in that, because that's like I said, that's something I've been struggling with. It's like, you have no idea how frustrating it is to go 8 years without dealing with pornography, to suddenly in 1 year it all comes back again. That is super frustrating, and it makes me feel like an absolute hypocrite when I go through that again. I feel like, where did I get off? Where did I fail? Why am I going through this again? I felt like this was dealt with back in 2011. Why am I going through this again? God was like, well, first up, perspective shift. You're coming to me. The goal is to come to me, not to run from me. Whenever you fail, make a mistake, come back to me. So there was a perspective shift that came to that. Instead of like hiding the sin, to expose the sin, to keep coming to him until it no longer is an issue anymore. But then also there was a perspective shift that was, I don't know why I'm going off on this tangent, but I feel like it needs to be. I'm sorry. But I felt like God was showing me that that he was kind of using this moment to be like, hey, we got to deal with the confrontation aspect, and you need, like, you're not paying attention, so I'm going to take an area that you think is a strength and let you know that it's not your own strength, it's my strength that's empowering you, so that you realize that and come back to me. And because, like, when I deal with this, is the fastest. Like, that was like the minute I start dealing with this again, boom, I'm going back to God about it. It's like,
Hmm.
that's why he chose to use that. He didn't tempt me, because God does not tempt us to sin. Uh,
Hmm.
but rather, he was showing me that this is not my strength, but it is his strength, and there's something that needs to be dealt with. And I kind of picked that up on that day that I was struggling. Where am I going with this, Tim?
Well, Brandon, I had a thought at the onset of this cast. You said that there are a lot of things that you try to do, and when you didn't do them properly, you felt that you had failed.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about how you actually make changes because um, I forget where I read this. Maybe it was in the Bible, maybe it was in some counseling book. I don't know. But basically, it said your thoughts become your words become your actions, actions become habits, habits become character, character becomes lifestyle. And, a lot of times we try and skip the head and the thoughts and the spoken word and what we say, and we skip right to behavior management, like managing my actions. It's like I'm going to allow myself to think this and say this. I'm just going to change my actions. And when that doesn't work, oh, I failed. And when it comes to making changes for things, especially things that are foundational, like your sexuality, you can't behavior manage that. You can't even speak manage that. It has to be a heart change. And before you can get to your heart, Nathan Mullis is going to the 18-inch journey, which is out someplace nearby, and their whole concept is making your relationship with Jesus go from your head to your heart because it's 18 inches, right? And thinking about how do you actually change that? Because for me, pornography was almost, I dealt with it for many years, and then all of a sudden it's like my desire for it, boop, just turned off. And I was one of the lucky ones. Now, I'm not saying I don't always. I'm not saying that I never have situations where I have to fight. Like, I do. There are situations where it comes across my mind and I have to say, nope, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And then a second later, it's like, nope, I already said I'm not doing that. And I'll just think to myself, oh, let me just type in pornhub.com and do whatever. Like, I have those thoughts sometimes, but it's been a heart change. I don't have to manufacture and renew because it's already here. I've got something. Every action that you commit has a trade-off. You're giving something for something. Right now that I'm married, I know that I value my wife, I value our relationship, and more importantly, I value myself enough not to give up my sexuality into pornography. And that's been a heart change for me, not because I manage my actions, not because I manage my words, but because I manage my thoughts, which influence my words and my actions. So you were talking about changing what I speak over myself. Is that important? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, will changing how you speak and what you declare change more in your life than actions? Absolutely. Will your thoughts change more than what you speak? Absolutely. But you kind of have to start here and let it trickle down. It's kind of like um, when you're cleaning the side of a house or something. I don't know why I'm using this analogy, but you'll spray the Windex, or like cleaning a surface, you'll spray the Windex or the cleaner, and you have the dirt on there, then you have the cleaner, then you spray the water above. You don't start at the bottom, you start at the top, and it washes all the way down. Like, the water will wash the cleaner, which washes the dirt, and it's a trickle down effect,
Mm.
And when you start working with the thoughts and say, I'm going to take that thought. That's why biblically it says, take every thought captive, renew your mind daily. That's how you go the 18-inch journey. You go from your heart to your head. So if you're struggling with something, and this, I guess I kind of jumped on what we're going to be talking on Friday. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But if you're struggling with something, don't focus on behavior management. Like Brandon was saying, it's your words, it's your thoughts. That's how you change your heart, and that's how you quantify success. You don't quantify your success with that by how am I doing. You quantify success with what am I choosing.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the main thing that I've also been trying to figure out, is like, what is still in my mind that is like, when it comes time to say no to this, it's like, well, we're gonna just skip over the no and just it's fine. And it's like, no, it's not fine. Like, it never has been fine. um, it's like the revert. I keep thinking of that meme with the astronauts looking at the planet. It's like, it's not been fine, never has been. But, and I knew, and that's the frustrating part. I knew on Tuesday, after going through what I went through and being in that shower, that the problem was I was not being confrontational. So I immediately began being confrontational as necessary. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the activity. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Where are the results? Why is this still an issue? And that's what I've been trying to figure out, I guess, as of recent. It's just like, okay, is there still a thought process that I'm believing? Like, why am I still in this? And I recognize also I can't live in anxiety. Somewhere in the past 2 to 3 years, I came to the realization that anxiety was the reason that kept me in porn, or made me most likely to watch porn. And so a part of that realization, since that point, I've been so against anxious thinking, and so I can't just like constantly over fixate on the why, because that produces anxiety. But at the same time, it's still there. It's just like, as of today, I've been doing fine today. Every time that I've messed up and I've looked at porn, I've been reminding myself, this is not who I am. I don't enjoy this. I enjoy resisting it. I'm free from this. I'm not sexually attracted to men. I'm not interested in any of that kind of stuff. I'm reminding myself every time, rather than allowing myself to be ran over by the thoughts of like, you did this again. How could you do this again? This is who you are, whatever. I'm like, no, I'm not accepting those thoughts, but like, what still is there that is like, because, and maybe maybe my focus is wrong, because for whatever reason, when I first got truly set free from porn back in 2011, it was just a clean cut. And within the span of a couple of weeks, like, I had gotten into the routine of speaking over myself what God's word says and changing my identity, and it was enough. And through being accountable with people, I was able to resist most temptations, and I had the desire to do the right thing, and that was it. And it worked from 2011 until this year. And so, like, maybe like that was a rare situation. I'm expecting more of that to happen, where that's not common. I don't know. Maybe my expectations are off.
Well, I think also, you experienced something new in this past year, that relationship with that girl that you were talking about.
Yes.
That really changes how you view things. Like,
it really did. To be very specific, like, there was a degree of anxiety and negative thinking about myself that was severed through my relationship with her. That a lot of like my main concerns, honestly, about can I be sexually attracted to women after dealing with homosexuality for such a long time, is that possible, was cut off. Because of that relationship, I realized I can. Not a problem. Not to say, again, we didn't do things we shouldn't have done. That never happened.
Well, Brandon, how did you know?
I have methods of knowing, trust me.
The world wants to know.
I had methods of knowing, okay? Some that should be probably obvious. But anyways, I had ways of knowing. But that fear was cut off entirely. And also a lot of the fear of pornography was cut off in that point, because again, it was tied to the fear of, oh no, my gosh, I'm going to go into homosexuality, and that was like, no, okay, so clearly I have no problem being attracted to women. That's not a problem. That was dealt with from that time. And I guess a lot of anxiety got cut off, but I guess there was stuff that wasn't dealt with, that the anxiety was propping me up against, and with the anxiety gone, there was nothing left to prop me up. And maybe that's what it is. God's been trying to shift my tools from anxiety-based tools to peace and love based tools of where I am truly disgusted by this, but it's not anxious based. It's more like I legitimately don't like it. I don't want it in my life. Like maybe that's what the case is, and so that's why it's been harder since that point to resist porn, because I'm no longer concerned of, oh no, I'm gonna fall into sin with homosexuality. I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not who I am. Like that identity was put to death thanks to that relationship. But it's frustrating nonetheless, because it's like, I mentor people, and I'm in positions of leadership, and I feel absolutely terrible, when I go through all that. It's like I feel like the number one hypocrite going through all that. I know I'm not, and I know I'm doing a lot of good things that are important, such as being accountable to you and to other people, to going to God, reading God's word, and doing everything that I know to do. I just feel like by this point I should be done, and I should not be going through this anymore. And there's a way, like I just, maybe I missed a step. Maybe on the 10-step process of being free from porn, I missed one, or I've been ignoring one. I've suppressed its memory or something. There's just so many thoughts.
Man, I was telling Ariane about this the other day because our profession now is being an example for people and trying to help them understand their life value and purpose. And I don't have it all figured out. And I constantly have to battle this process in my mind where I think, oh, well, if you don't have it figured out, why do you think you're qualified to help other people? And I had somebody on stream ask me that the other day. Why are you qualified to be a life coach? What do you think qualifies? I was like, that's a great question, because I definitely don't have any plaques on my walls that I know of, and I'm just thinking, okay, well, that's similar to telling people about Jesus. How am I qualified to tell people about Jesus if I don't know the Bible verbatim, word for word, back to front? Like I've never even read Psalms. Not all. Psalms bores the heck out of me, and I struggle through it, and every time I think about that, and Ariane encouraged me in this way, and I think, okay, well, I've been through stuff, and it's not about what I've done and what my results are that's the magic. It's how you navigate things. I was talking to a client last night about destinations, and how you can talk yourself into a destination mindset where you think to yourself, oh, I just wish this day was over. Man, I can't wait till this week is over. The Bible says God's gift to man is his toil. Eat, drink, and be merry, and be thankful for the day, not for tomorrow. It says, in fact, don't worry for tomorrow, because tomorrow's got its own worries.
Yeah.
Worry for today. Think about today.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if that's true, then, and the process is more important than where you're going, and having a relationship with Jesus is so much more important than getting to heaven. You'll get to heaven if you have a relationship with Jesus. You don't have to have the Bible completely figured out front to back. You just need. It says the way to heaven, or the way to heaven, the path to destruction is wide, but the door to heaven is very narrow. And I don't know the complete words. You understand what I'm trying to say? I don't know all, but people need to see your testimony, and their story is going to be completely different, because they've got their own layers, they've got their own issues, they've got their own situations, relationships, position in life, status, season, everything is different. So you can't supplant what worked for them into your life and vice versa, and it working. That's why the results-oriented gospel, a results-oriented process does not work. Yeah. It's different for everybody. They need to see, as Christians, specifically for us, how we navigate things. It's what you do, how you what comes out of you that defiles you, not what goes into you. It's like, okay, well, what comes out when you're pressed? And that's what people need to see, and that's what's so much more important. That's why your process is so awesome, Brandon, because you're on here bearing yourself to the world, knowing, okay, well, I have the propensity to, or the opportunity to influence hundreds of thousands of people through these podcasts that we're doing and videos and whatever on YouTube. And here I am dealing with pornography as a counselor and mentor. It's like, Brown, figure it out. No. Here's my process, guys. Because my process is messy, it's okay if yours is too.
Mm,
You're gonna get there, and you are get there. Don't worry about the result. Worry about what you're doing. Worry about your thoughts. Worry about your actions. Not so much as your actions as your words and your thoughts, but focus on that. Tomorrow is another day to try again, and
yeah,
God is always speaking to you, trying to help you with that.
yeah, yeah. Um, Dang, there was a thing that I was gonna say, and then I forgot it as I was listening to the rest of what you were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brandon.
It's okay.
Actually,
It's
no, never
okay.
mind.
But I think I just, again, that's why I enjoy doing stuff like that, because again, I definitely have looked up to people. Saw there's certain people in my life that are just like, they seem to, they're where I want to head. I think it's really impossible for people not to have some sort of role model. I think that's not an unhealthy thing to have role models, as long as you're not allowing that same role model to beat you into the ground, kind of thing. Like, just to have
Hmm.
someone or something to be moving up to in life. I feel like that's at least a good way to kind of at least give a foundation of where I'm headed. But I feel like it, as potentially one for other people, I just want people to know that it's just like, we all have things that we're going through, and just because we're going through them regularly does not mean we don't need to stop fighting them. And it does not also mean that if we are going through them again, does not mean that we have failed. It just means that we're living in a flesh body that wants the fastest, quickest, feel goodest thing possible, and we have to crucify that daily. We have to say no to it. And sometimes we're going to say no to it with a lot of strength and gusto, and other days we're going to barely whisper no to it because we're exhausted and don't feel like we have any strength. But regardless of how we do it, that we do it, I think, which is most important. And to know that me as a Christian, um, you know, I have my own things, and
Hmm.
you have your own things, and if you're going through them but you're doing your best, I think that's what's most important. And I want to kind of share with you how I'm doing them, so that you have a foundation for yourself to move forward towards. This is what's worked for me: talking about the issue, praying about it, not keeping it in the darkness, not pretending like it's not there, but addressing it as it comes up. That's been the most effective means. Taking thoughts captive has been the most effective means of truly getting to that place where I can be the role model that I look up to. I'm never going to be exactly them. I'm never going to, because that would be stupid anyways. Who wants to have clones of the same person? But, I will eventually get to a place where I'll exude the strengths that they have worked so hard to have, because I have worked on it, talked about it, prayed about it, readjusted when my expectations were wrong, and never never lived a life of secrecy. So, and I think, also it's good. I want to encourage you guys to live a life like this, because when you live and you don't have secrets, then you also, people, the only way that people can do anything destructive towards you is by fabricating crap. There is nothing they can pull out to say, this person wasn't talking about that.
Oh, dude, have you ever seen the eight? Was it the Green Mile or Eighth Mile or whatever, that movie with Eminem where
I
it talks
have
about his
not.
life?
Tell me about it.
Oh, it is so good. Well, I mean, I don't care what you guys think. I thought it was good. Uh, but basically, they had rap battles, and you know what those are, right?
Relatively.
Yeah. So you have two sides, and basically they diss each other, right? And so Eminem gets up on stage, and the other guy, just like the first time, just absolutely annihilates him, wrecks him. And he goes back, and he's like, "Oh, all this stuff happens." But the second time he goes back, he starts dissing himself. And he's like, "You know what? You had sex with my girlfriend, and I'm from a trailer park, and I'm this." And when it came to the other guy's turn, he had nothing to do because he didn't want to diss himself, and Eminem had already dissed himself. So the guy was like, what do I say? I think it's so cool because when you're honest about your situation, people know who you are. There's nothing to hide. And when our Mondays are called Get Naked Mondays because we take our clothes. Well, not
Literally.
we metaphorically take
Yes.
our clothes off, just like when Adam and Eve were in the garden. They put their clothes on. They were like, God was like, "Where are you guys?" And they were like, Eve, shut your mouth. Don't let them know. It's like, no. Let's just bear it all, because that's how we were meant to be. We're not meant to be pent up, hiding ourselves. We're not meant to be stuck in our pride, thinking, oh, you know, our value is at stake if we're honest about what's going on in our hearts. Because I can only imagine what the relationship was between Adam and God back initially before all this stuff happened. And they were just walking around talking. Adam probably had some really dumb thoughts, and it was God's prerogative to say, well, Adam, here's my heart on this. And Adam was like, okay. Adam didn't think twice about being honest about what was going on in here and in here, because he knew that he had a father that loved him unconditionally and did not judge him, which is exactly how we're supposed to be to our neighbors. Now, we don't always get it right, but if you have somebody, and a lot of us, most of us have people in our lives, and if you don't, I would encourage you to seek people like this. Like Brandon is one of those people, and he's not perfect at it. He's human, but I can come to Brandon and say, Brandon, here's the skeleton that's in my closet. And he's like, oh, well, I'm sorry. Well, let's talk about that. Instead of saying, ew, you have that issue? It's like, no. Okay, well, just what's on your heart? What do you need to get off of your chest so that you can be free? And that's what freedom is. Yeah. Freedom's not being weighed down by all this baggage.
Yeah. Axeman says, did Tim just confuse 8 Mile with the Green Mile?
I sure did.
Yeah.
Wait, Green Mile was the one about the guy that got executed, right? And 8 Mile was with Eminem.
I don't know.
I don't. It doesn't matter.
I'm sure Axeman will correct us both if he knows the answer to that question.
Oh, he must be a Baptist.
He must be a Baptist.
Also kidding. Baptist, put away your stones. Keep your Bible at your sides.
No.
Kidding once again.
Axeman is Catholic, ironically.
Ooh, even worse.
Oh!
Kidding one last time.
Can I take that arrow? Oh my gosh.
Well, Brandon, are you sufficiently disrobed tonight?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more than I can talk about, but we'll have Friday to kind of pick up with anything that I might have missed, and because the topic is going to be about, just to kind of make the distinction here, this coming Friday's topic is going to be on the root of addiction. So just so you have something to look forward to, Tim and I will be kind of going over what exactly causes addictions. Like when you see pornography in your life, or you see drug addictions, you can't start your day without starting with vaping or something, or you're very reliant on alcohol. Where does that come from? Instead of getting angry and frustrated with the result, which is the action, instead focusing on what caused it, what's the roots. That's what we'll be talking about this Friday. Axe says, I was going to correct your wrongness, but my Catholic lips are now sealed. Okay, Axeman.
Well, why don't we have Mary go up against Jesus and see how that goes?
Ooh.
I'm just kidding. Jesus wins.
You're just serious. I'm just serious. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so yeah. This Friday we'll be talking about the root of addiction. So we would love to have you there for that. We'll be doing that at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you're there for that. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you've not done so already, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. And if this video has really meant a lot to you, please do share it with other people, whether it be through YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you're watching it now, because we want people to see what we're showing right now, and for that all people to live in a sort of freedom. Freedom from that kind of like fear of like, oh no, I made a mistake and I can never recover from this, and these people are so perfect and never achieve. Like, no, everyone has mistakes that they're working through. So if this has hit you, be sure to like and share this so that way more people can see this message. It's okay, I know it's about my personal life, but people gotta know. So, but anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys have a good night. Holy Mother Mary of God brought him into this world, and no bring him out of it.
Oh goodness.